Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Doug Las Vegas Bets UFC Betting Show. This week we got UFC Vegas 117 back at the Apex, headlined by featherweights Arnold Allen and Melquizael Costa. I think this is a great card, especially at the top. I love the top three fights, Allen versus Costa, Santos versus Choi is a banger, and then Wellmaker versus Diaz. Couple of prospects going at it. There's a couple other fun matchups sprinkled throughout the card. I like Timmy Cuamba and Bernardo, Sopaj. So without further ado, let's get things started with this main event. Starting off with this fantastic main event. I'm really excited for this one. I really like both Arnold Allen and Melquizael Costa, so I think this is a fantastic matchup as we have Arnold Allen coming into this one, kind of struggling 1-3 in his last 4, and that opportunity knocks for Melquizael Costa, who's won his last 5, to kind of step in here or 6 even, to step in here and take his spot up there in the rankings and prove he belongs. Not just in the rankings, but at the top of the division. Because we'll start here with Arnold Allen, and like I said, he's 1-3 in his last 4, but it's probably 3 of the most impressive losses you could put together in the featherweight division. First, it was Max Holloway. He was coming off that third Volk fight, and I thought Allen looked really good in this fight. This was still a very strong Max Holloway. Max Holloway's an all-time great, and although he was probably outside of his prime at this point, being able to legitimately take rounds off of Max Holloway, stay competitive with Max Holloway in a striking match, just not getting drowned, is something in its own to consider an accomplishment, especially when it was the first time he had really gone that deep into a fight. We had him versus Kattar as a main event before that, but it didn't play out very long. It went early into the second round before Kattar injured his knee. So I thought Allen handled that really well. Then obviously just got a brutal next matchup against Movsar. I was lucky enough to be there live for that one. It was one of the best fights on the card. I remember Dana said, I think something to the extent of it was the least fun fight of all time. And that pretty much just confirmed to me that he didn't watch much of that card because it was one of the better ones on it. There was an argument, of course, for Allen to beat Movsar, especially without the controversial grounded knee thing where it was just a difference of locational rule set. So yeah, you could easily say that Arnold Allen is right there with Movsar, who's next to challenge for the title. Then he beat Giga Chikadze, which is a solid win. We saw Vallejos finish Giga, but that was the first time he's ever been finished. And he's competed with a lot of solid competition in the division for a while. He's gone back, had that main event against Edson Barboza, and before the Kattar fight, people were talking about him as a title contender maybe. So I still think that's a solid win. And then he gets another brutal matchup in John Silva. And through one round, he looked incredible in that fight. I was very impressed with how he handled the first round. Really stuck to the kind of combinations that he felt would work and put the volume on Silva. I just think overall the marauding pressure of Silva is going to be too much for a lot of guys to deal with when he starts rolling downhill, when he starts landing those big shots. It's going to have an impact. And it had more of an impact, but I don't think this was a bad performance by Arnold Allen at all in any of his losses. I think you can look at all 3 of his losses, and I've been more impressed with him in those losses than a lot of guys in their wins. Even some Melquizael Costa's wins. That being said, going over to Costa, I do like him. I think he's an incredibly fun fighter. He's put together a well-rounded finisher's skill set. Going back to getting the tap on Andre Fili in round 1 in that pick'em fight, gets the decision over the durable Christian Rodriguez. Had a great fight with Julian Erosa. I was surprised, even in hindsight, that he didn't finish him with all the knockouts Erosa took, and the fact that his most recent 2 wins have both been by first round knockout, where he got a head kick knockout over Morgan Charrier in a fight where he was also a pick'em, and then that spinning back heel knock kick right at the bell in the first round that finished Dan Ige. Unfortunately, we had Costa by decision, or I had Costa by decision in that one, so that cost me, but man, he's been on a great run, and you heard some of the names that I listed there. These are veterans. This wasn't like he had one decent win. He didn't just land the head kick against Charrier, and they were like, all right, we'll give him the rankings. No, this has been a guy who's really built up his skill set. He's still under 30 years old. Came into the UFC with that short notice loss to Thiago Moises, and I think he's really done well to hone his game, put things together, and get himself on the right track. And clearly it's working. So as far as my take on how this fight's going to go, I think the price has to be kind of close because of their recent records. So I understand keeping Melquizael Costa alive. He's a dangerous, well-rounded guy. It's hard to really poke holes in him enough to make him a big underdog against anyone who's not the elite of the division or a big underdog. So I think the line makes sense. I think Allen's the rightful favorite here. I might even have him closer to minus 200. I mean, close fights with Max Holloway, Movsar Evloev, and John Silva, you can say, but he lost them all. How would Melquizael Costa do in those? And that's not a knock on Costa. It's hard to call it what do you say? I'll just call it a knock again, but it's hard to say it's a knock to say someone would lose to Max Holloway, Movsar Evloev, and John Silva. I mean, at this point, you're basically saying, is he top 3 in the division or not, if you're asking if he wins those fights. But again, Allen didn't win any of those fights, and it wasn't like he had the split decisions or the Movsar one could have gone to him. But so you can say that Allen's like firmly entrenched in that top 5-ish area, and I think Costa just might not be there yet. I think he can get there, but a couple these main event spots, a couple more wins over big guys that aren't, Dan Ige is great. He's been around forever. I don't think that's the toughest test in 2026 to measure if a fighter is championship caliber. I think, Arnold Allen is a great test to find out if a fighter's championship caliber. If Costa wins this fight, absolutely, you put him in one of the big fights. He's a fight or 2 away from a title. Probably 2. Especially considering the line that's forming up there at featherweight. They got to get Volk versus Evloev booked soon. But overall, yeah, I am going to pick Arnold Allen to get a decision win here. I think it's going to be a fairly competitive fight. I struggle to see Costa getting his grappling going if Movsar can't really hold you down in the wrestling. I have a hard time seeing Costa do that, even if he has a bit more of a submission threat. I'm not overly concerned about that. We haven't seen Arnold Allen submitted. He's shown he's got a very competent ground game. So I'm not too worried about the grappling. And then I think on the feet, it's just going to be Allen's going to be a slight step ahead a little while. I wouldn't be surprised if Costa took some rounds. I wouldn't be surprised if he had some moments. But considering the durability of Allen, I find it unlikely that he gets finished because he's not getting up there in age. There's no concern about him being washed. And then just the experience, the level of competition, the 5-round experience, and the fact that it's going to be mostly played out as a striking match, I do favor Allen. So give me Arnold Allen to get a decision here. He's likely going to be the last leg in my parlay of the week this week, if that number doesn't move too much. I got to leave that caveat after the Joaquin Buckley-Brady incident. Next, we'll stay at featherweight with another banger matchup here as the Korean Superboy Doo-Ho Choi is back, taking on Daniel Willie Cat Santos. This is a fun one between 2 guys who know how to put on a show. Obviously, Doo-Ho Choi is already in the UFC Hall of Fame with his in the fight wing with his fight with Cub Swanson, where they absolutely went to war. One of my favorite fights of all time. Obviously, we saw him take a massive layoff following his Charles Jourdain loss, which was his 3rd loss in a row at the time. There was some concern. He went to I believe it was handle his military service in Korea. And then he came back. And since he's come back, he hasn't been the most active. But the 3 fights, I thought he looked good. I thought he beat Kyle Nelson. I think most people believe that he should have got the decision in that one. It was, a little weird. But I do think that Troy looked good there. And then in the more recent 2 performances, he looked even better. Knocked out Senor Perfecto, Bill Algeo, which is a bit of a tricky matchup, maybe not the most high-level guy, and then most recently put on a really good performance against Nate Landwehr, getting the finish late, where he showed off his boxing early, and he showed off some real improvements to his ground game in this one, too. So I like Doo-Ho Choi. Another point I want to touch on in the Nate Landwehr fight, I really think that fight in particular shows a lot of his evolution from the earlier days. I mean, you look at the Cub Swanson fight, and I think when most people think of the peak of Doo-Ho Choi, they look to the Cub Swanson fight. But I think the current version, or at least the version that we saw late in 2024, he has been out for a year and almost a year and a half. But I think that version was improved. I mean, you look at the Cub Swanson fight, and
all the time. He is just locked and loaded. You could just watch his right hand and it's either loaded or firing the entire fight. It's his main offense. It's his big weapon. He loves it. And then you go to the Nate Landwehr fight and he's leading with that right hand, but he's using it to set up his lead hand. He landed it a couple times in the first round. He fired a big right straight and then threw an uppercut behind it, and it got through a lot. It rocked Landwehr, got his attention a lot. And I think that shows his evolution beyond the step up in his ground game, which he also showed. But it shows that there's definitely an evolution of striking to he's not just this missile right-handed power puncher anymore. He's got real boxing technique, real fundamentals. He puts the combinations together. There's just more thought to his striking. On the other side, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum of thought to striking is Daniel Santos. He is all about the pressure. Coming from the famed shootbox gym that didn't make Charles Oliveira famous. Sorry, Charles Oliveira made the shootbox gym famous, is the better way to put it. But you know what they're known for. You know they're going to be doing those high-paced attacks. They're going to be well-rounded. They're going to have the ability to mix in the grappling like Santos does. We saw him land a takedown, get on top for a bit in the first round of his last fight, even if he didn't do much with it. Just shows that he'll mix it in. He'll trade low kicks. He doesn't have the best low kick defense. We saw him eat a few against Sang Yuan Jung Lee. Just doesn't have the best defense in general, actually. He was hit with big shots in both of those fights, right down the pipe. Did recover well, obviously, has a great chin. You can't pressure without a good chin. Honestly, I don't know how, but at shootbox, they're training the chin. Everybody there seems to have a good chin, but he keeps good pace, in your face pressure, well-rounded attack. Overall, as far as my take on this fight, I'm taking Choi as the underdog, and I'm going to lock him in now as my underdog best bet of the week. I will be posting that on my socials later. I'm trying to lock that in before the podcast because I feel like last week, I talked about Gomi being my underdog best bet of the week. Obviously, that did not look good. I just said the Kopylov fight was 50-50, and he ended up being my underdog best bet of the week. So I am trying to lock that in a little earlier just for you guys that watch the YouTube but don't follow me on socials. Although it would be greatly appreciated if you could go follow me on socials as well. I am trying to lock that in sooner for you guys. So I'm going to lock in Choi here, and I'm going to tell you guys why. Because I think he's... the technical striking, I give him a clear edge. I do think the durability is a little bit of a concern, especially with that pace, the wild shots of Santos. Santos is going to land. It's the game that he plays. He will eat some to give some. He trusts his own chin. And we obviously have seen Choi take a couple knockout losses. We saw him get knocked out by the hardest hitting 145er Jeremy Stevens and Charles Jourdain before his layoff. So I do still think there's a minor durability concern. I don't think he has the worst chin in the world by getting knocked out by two solid guys. But I do think it's a notable thing against a wild power puncher like Santos. But I don't think it's enough to justify him being at this price, because I think he's going to be bigger. He's going to look bigger. He's the more natural featherweight. Santos has this awkward build where he kind of looks really out of shape sometimes. Although I don't doubt that he's in shape. I want to make that clear. I know the guy can go hard for 3 rounds. He will keep that pressure in your face. But still, I think Choi is going to be the more physically imposing guy, taller, more reach. I think he's just naturally more filled out at the weight class. And then as far as the grappling, I don't think we'll see Santos have much success. I think he might be the one shooting. But, you know, he barely got on top of Ju Sang Yu for a minute or so and didn't do anything with it. I don't think Choi's a worse grappler than that for sure. So yeah, I favor Choi here. I'm going to pick him. He's going to be my underdog best bet of the week. If I had to give a method, give me a decision. Santos is tough. It's hard to tell if Choi is going to be able to put him down. So I'll take Choi by decision and him at the money line right around plus 140. We'll go to the prospects at bantamweight as two guys looking to make their way up in the division square off in this fun matchup between Malcolm Wellmaker and Juan Diaz. We'll start with Wellmaker. He's the more experienced guy. He's the big favorite here, and we've seen him. He's built his hype in the UFC after starting things out with 2 first-round knockout finishes. in the UFC and an impressive faceplant knockout on Dana White's Contender Series to earn him the contract. Obviously, the guy has big power in his hands. He loads it up, and he's sharp and accurate. Even in his loss to Ethan Ewing last fight, which aged pretty well, might I add, Ethan Ewing looked really good against Estevam as well. He was landing big shots on Ewing's chin. Ewing just has a fantastic chin and had the ability to keep a higher volume and land strikes of his own. So I don't hold that too far against Wellmaker. I think he's a very hard-hitting guy. I think he knows how to use his weapons, how to mix them together well. And one thing he showed in that that fight that we hadn't necessarily seen is he's got quite the chin. Ewing landed some good shots, landed a nice head kick in the second round. And Wellmaker never really seemed like he was going anywhere. A couple times where he got caught with good ones, but the fight wasn't really close to being stopped. So I was impressed with his durability in that one. It's a tough thing to go through, getting beat up like that as a big favorite against a guy on short notice. But I find it easier than I would in most cases to let it slide. Now, Juan Diaz on the other side, he comes in off of the Contender Series where I'm sure you've all seen the crazy spinning elbow he landed on Juan. It was a good fight. It was an honest back and forth fight. Juan had some success in the striking. He got into a rhythm a few times. Juan Diaz showed his well-roundedness, obviously, by landing the knockout, but also showed that he's willing to commit hard for takedowns. He's not just going to bail the second he feels any resistance. He got in deep on the legs there and worked hard. So I think the guy's well-rounded. He's tough. You know, I mean, we don't really know he has a chin, but how many Peruvian brawlers have you seen that don't have a chin, right? Like, we watched Rolando Bedoya take the best shots from Khaos Williams for a while. Jose Ochoa's got a chin. I mean, maybe it's silly to assume that just because he's Peruvian, he has a great chin. Well, yeah, he has taken some damage in some of his fights. He's got his head snapped back, but he's never faced a real killer knockout threat and survived or taken their best shots. So maybe it's a good thing that he hasn't shown how good the chin is, but I do believe that he has one. Now, for my take on this fight, my first bet is I'm going to have two bets on it. My first one's going to be the over 2.5 at plus 130 for a reason that I'm sure you guys figured out, and based on my breakdowns, I think both of these guys are very durable. Obviously, they're hard hitters. You look at their wins and they come by knockout. The big spinning elbow on Contender Series sits in everybody's mind, and then the two wins that Wellmaker has in the UFC are knockouts. So everyone's going to assume their path to victory is a knockout. But I think durability almost matters more than actual power in your hands when you're trying to guess if someone's going to knock someone out. And when I look at these guys, I don't see either of these guys going down consistently, even though Wellmaker's a very hard hitter. And that brings me to my next bet. I do think Wellmaker has a clear advantage here. I think he's going to be landing the harder, cleaner shots. So I went ahead and took him by decision at plus 250 here. I think that's a really good price for a fight that I do expect to go the distance, even though the odds aren't there, and you've got the clear favorite to take that decision at plus 250. I really like the odds on that play. I think there's a very decent chance this one goes to decision. Like I said, I expect it to go that way, hence why I'm betting the over 2.5. And then if it does get there, I think it's possible that Juan Diaz has won a decision, especially considering Wellmaker's history to the decision hasn't been the best, with him winning a majority in a split and his only loss being a unanimous decision. So definitely some hesitancy in taking Wellmaker by decision, which is why I've got the over 2.5 to guarantee profit as long as it gets to the decision. But I do think at plus 250, there's enough value for me to lock that one in. Not sure if that's going to be the prop play of the week or a second one that I am going to talk about later in the video. But yeah, my pick for this one's going to be Malcolm Wellmaker to take a decision. For this one, forgive me, I've got the wrong graphic up. As I was recording, I've discovered that Rodolfo Bellotto's out of this fight. So you're looking at Modestas Bukauskas somewhere over there. And he is not, in fact, taking on Rodolfo Bellotto, but they did find a replacement in Christian Edwards. So there is still not a light heavyweight fight here. It's a catch weight at 215, but we do still have a fight here. I'm not going to bother fixing the graphic because No. So, we'll start with Modestas Bukauskas here. He is a solid kickboxer with plenty of UFC experience now. He's come back on his second run, and he's done pretty well. He's definitely had a lot more success than he had on the first run, coming off a late finished loss to Nikita Krylov, although Krylov is a guy who's been at the top of the division in the rankings for a long time, so that's not the biggest deal. We've also seen him compete with names like Paul Craig and Iwan Kutelaba, who are veterans of the division, and he's put on pretty good performances, even though the Kutelaba fight is debatable whether he won the decision or not. I thought it was a solid performance. I think Kutelaba is a solid, tricky fighter to deal with for anybody. So I give him credit. And then obviously when you give him the real steps down, like the Rafael Cerqueira fight, he shows that he can dispose of those lower level guys like he did there. On the other side, stepping in for Rodolfo Bellato is Christian Edwards. This guy, I haven't watched much of him. He is a big and powerful light heavyweight. He is at 6'5". He has some experience in Bellator, and most recently fought CFFC title. Not his last fight. His last fight was against Glendale Whitney, but he did fight Luke Fernandez, who's now in the UFC, and funny enough, got knocked out by Bellato, who was supposed to be in this fight. So some weird MMA math and how we got here, but there's always those funny connections. As far as he goes, I don't think he's the highest level. I'm concerned about his durability. He has an under 40-second knockout loss in Bellator. He had 3 straight losses in Bellator at one point. Does have a win over UFC veteran Jake Collier, although it was due to injury, not necessarily a great win. So yeah, I don't think Edwards is the highest level fighter. I think he's got danger. He's obviously got size. And it's a fist fight. He's live. See you, Charlie. Although here, I haven't seen a betting line. One hasn't popped up yet on Bet Online. They actually still have the Bellato line open. Like, this just happened while I'm recording. So maybe I might post some more detailed thoughts on this fight, look into this one later in the week. But I'm just going to try and get the video out now. And for the purposes of the video, I'm going to take Modestas Bukauskas to get a decision win here. I think Bukauskas has just proven that he belongs on that UFC level, that he is like not quite a rankings caliber fighter, but he's a guy that you can't just come into the UFC and think, oh, like any debutant can handle this guy. No, I think there is a certain caliber of fighter that you have to be to go in there and compete with Bukauskas. And I just don't believe that Edwards is that. I don't believe he's shown that. So I'm going to pick Bukauskas here. Certainly not rushing to hammer him no matter what the price is, although I do expect him to be a sizable favorite, which will make it even more difficult. But yeah, my pick here is going to be Bukauskas by decision. Back to our regularly scheduled programming with this fight. Bantamweight between Timmy Cuamba and Bernardo Sopaj. I really like both of these fights. I like Timmy Cuamba. I got a soft spot for anybody that's ever cashed an underdog of the week for me. And he did against, who was it? Roberto Romero. Sorry. That name did not come to me for a second. Anyways, he's taking on Bernardo Sopaj in a matchup of pretty young, fun bantamweights here. Cuamba's just 27, Sopaj just 25. So we'll start with Timmy Cuamba here. He's actually come down 2 weight classes since his debut. His debut was a short notice fight with Balaji Oki up at 155. And he went to decision there. We know Oki's a powerful, hard-hitting guy. So I think the fact that he was durable enough to go to decision with him at 155 and then made it down to 135 is pretty impressive. I thought he looked good at 145 in his couple performances there too. Even the Lucas Almeida fight, he got stung early and it looked like he never really recovered. Just every time he got hit, it looked like it redid the same thing. And even still late in the third round of that fight, he was wrestling hard, still doing the right things. His body was responding right, at least from a technical perspective. Roberto Romero fight was pretty good. I liked his counterboxing. It looked tremendous. He was very disciplined defensively, and then when he got a chance to uncork it, he went in, got the flying knee. And then most recently with his bantamweight move against Chang Ho Lee, another solid all-around performance. I mean, he hasn't really shown over I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, crazy finishing skills. But I think he's got solid pop, solid power. This is a solid, well-rounded young fighter that I think is going to hang around for a while. I don't know if he's going to make a push to the rankings or anything, but I do like Timmy Cuamba's skill set. Now, he's taking on Bernardo Sopaj, or Sopaj. I think it's Sopaj, forgive me. He is the Swedish grappler from the All-Stars gym that Khamzat Chimaev used to train at. So we know he's coming in good shape. Many people will definitely remember him from his debut war when he was just 23 years old. He came in and fought Vinicius Oliveira in a bantamweight matchup that was absolutely fantastic, and it ended, unfortunately for Sopaj, with Vinicius Oliveira landing a crazy jumping knee that put him face down. Responded with a good win over Ricky Tercios. I feel like I've said this recently, but I always say it. Ricky Tercios is a tricky guy to beat, so I always give guys who beat him the credit that he's a solid win. You know, he can do some things really well. He's not just a can that you're going to go in there and finish in the first round. I mean, this guy probably beats a lot more people if he gets some better matchmaking. But that's not the point. Talking about Sopaj's actual skill set, he's a solid, obviously very tough striker. Can mix in the grappling. The thing that stands out to me is he's been off for almost a year and a half here at just 25 years old. So I'm kind of expecting some big leaps from Sopaj. I mean, obviously Cuamba's not an older guy either. He's just 27, so he can still be improving himself. But with how young Sopaj is, how little UFC experience he has, I think we've seen far from the final product of him. And for that reason, I'm going to lean towards him in this fight. I was kind of tempted by Cuamba at the dog odds, but I think I'm just going to stay away and watch this one as a fan. I think this is going to be a really fun, competitive fight, but I do lean Sopaj to mix in the grappling, keep up with the striking, and steal a decision win here. This one's a good one between welterweight strikers as Nikolay Veretennikov takes on Khaos Williams. Veretennikov, a durable kickboxer who we've seen have some tough schedule, if you will. We saw him fight Michael Morales on Contender Series. We've seen him fight Danny Barlow. We saw him finish by Austin Vanderford. And then most recently, we saw him fight Punahele Soriano, who's on a great streak right now. And then with a couple wins sprinkled in there against Francisco Prado and most recently, Nico Price. So with Veretennikov, the main thing that I think of as soon as I see this guy is his durability. Obviously, he did get finished by Vanderford, but that was just kind of him getting on top and getting stuck. I think the guy has a fantastic chin. He takes big shots from hard hitters and Danny Barlow, Michael Morales. These are guys that could easily go up to 185 and be hard hitters. Austin Vanderford was at 185. Not that he was a hard hitter there. Punahele Soriano was at 185 too. This guy fights a lot of big guys. But yeah, he's durable. He's got solid kickboxing. He showed that, you know, if you give him a guy like Nico Price, he's going to handle him like you should handle a guy like Nico Price in his last fight. So there was, you know, there's good things there. This guy's definitely not a can. He's not just going to go away with one shot. Khaos Williams, he has had an interesting career because he was kind of pushing the rankings at one point with that fight with Randy Brown where he almost finished him. Then since then he's been just 2-2. Kind of again pushed his way really close to the rankings and then fought Gabriel Bonfim and got caught in that nasty choke that put him out really late in round 2. And then most recently he fought Andreas Gustafsson in Gustafsson's debut and he got pushed around in that one. I was very surprised at how Khaos Williams got schooled by Gustafsson there. The pressure was just too much for him. He couldn't get him off of him. As far as my take for this fight, I don't think about the Gustafsson fight too much. I'm going to pick Khaos Williams here. I don't think Veretennikov can put the same kind of pressure on him. I think it's going to be more of a strike-for-strike kickboxing match where I think it's very close. Both of these guys are pretty durable. They both have good shins. So again, this is another fight where I'm looking at the over at plus money and pairing it with Khaos Williams by decision. So I'm going to do something very similar here that I did with the Juan Diaz Malcolm Wellmaker fight. Although Khaos Williams is a much shorter favorite, I do think he, as the slight favorite, his main path to victory is a decision. He's favored more by knockout. I find it pretty unlikely that he lands a knockout shot on Veretennikov when Morales, Danny Barlow, Punahele, they couldn't. I don't think he's going to mix in the wrestling enough to get a ground and pound stoppage like Austin Vanderford. It's definitely not Khaos Williams' style, so that would surprise me if there was any grappling in this fight. But yeah, again, I'm going to take the over because this is a closely lined fight. It wouldn't shock me at all if Veretennikov came out and had the bigger moments. But I do lean towards Khaos Williams with his UFC success and his strength of schedule. So give me Khaos Williams to get a decision here. That was the other one I was eyeing for prop play of the week. So one of those two combos, the over 2.5 and favorite by decision in Wellmaker versus Diaz and Khaos Williams versus Nikolay Veretennikov is going to be the prop play of the week. But I am going to play both of those. Next, we'll go to the light heavyweights as Tuco Tokkos takes on Ivan Erslan. Oh boy. Well, let's start with Tuco Tokkos here. He is a solid grappler, decent submission game. If he gets on top, good top control. Not the greatest wrestler. Definitely have some durability concerns. He did go 3 rounds with Navajo Sterling, but Umar C was able to get him out of there early with the submission. And when he fought on road to UFC, Ming Yang Zhang took him out in the first round of that one. Although, like I said, good top game, good submissions. He got on top and finished Junior Tafa late in that fight, or late in the second round of that fight. So yeah, I mean, you don't want the guy on top of you, but the striking defense, the chin, even if he faces another grappler, he kind of struggles. And then you look at a guy in Ivan Erslan, who he was submitted in his last fight by Jimmy Crute, although he's had a pretty tough UFC schedule so far, fighting Iwan Kutalaba in his debut, Navajo Sterling in his second fight, and then most recently, of course, getting finished by Jimmy Crute last September. He is a big, stocky, athletic guy, solid cardio, pushes the pace, big power, but his defense leaves some to be desired. Navajo Sterling looked like he was going to get him out of there late. Once Jimmy Crute got on top, he got him in. Whenever you see a submission that you don't often see, it's weird. He got him in the Pez dispenser where he lifted his chin up from the back instead of grabbing the neck. It was a pretty cool finish. Has lost 4 of his last 5, though, so ugly record coming in here. Oh, as far as my take on this one, I actually kind of lean towards Erslan. I don't see Tuco getting on top of him, and I think he has the clear striking advantage here. So I'm going to pick Erslan to get, or Erslan, excuse me, not Aslan. I'm going to pick Erslan here to get a first round knockout, although I'm just not very confident in this one. If Tuco does get on top, I think he can have success. I just don't know if he has the wrestling game to get Erslan down, and Erslan's swings so big, and with Tuco's, my questions about his durability, I lean towards Erslan to get a knockout finish here. Go to the women's bantamweights here for what I believe is the highest stakes fight rankings-wise outside of the main event on the entire card, as Ketlen Vieira takes on Jacqueline Cavalcanti in sort of a striker versus grappler matchup. Maybe wouldn't dumb Vieira down to just a grappler. She mixes it up well. But Jacqueline Cavalcanti is certainly the striker here, and I think Vieira should look to grapple. We'll start with Vieira. She is up near the top of the division, and for good reason. She's competed with an incredible level of competition going back to her main event over Holly Holm, where she got the split decision. Fought with former champ Rocky Raquel Pennington on her way to the title. Fought with Kayla Harrison on her way to the title. And her most recent loss is a close decision to Norma Dumont, where she showed she had the better grappling, got some time on top in round 2, had some good clinch work in round 3. But ultimately it was not enough to take the decision off Ketlen Vieira. On the other side, Jacqueline Cavalcanti, she comes in 5-0 in the UFC, with all her wins coming by decision, most recently the win over former title challenger Mayra Bueno Silva, who Rocky Pennington won that belt over. Before that, not the highest level of competition. She debuted against Zara Farron and had a couple of split decisions. With Josiane Nunes, Nora Cornell, and then fought Julia Avila, and got the step up in Mayra Bueno Silva, who, with respect to Mayra Bueno Silva, she's a dangerous and one of the more exciting women in that division. I think her game got figured out, and it went downhill from there. The game was mapped out on how to beat her, and Cavalcanti followed that, as well as several other of her more recent opponents. With that, as far as this one goes, I lean Vieira as the underdog here. I think she's the more well-rounded, more experienced fighter. I think Cavalcanti definitely has the higher ceiling at this point in her career. She's 5-0, she's younger. If she gets past this, I think she has great upside near the top of the division. But I could easily see Vieira taking a round on top, making this really close, using some ugly clinch work, and just making this a very close, questionable decision. And when I see it like that, I always like to take the underdog, especially when they have more experience, the clear grappling advantage. So I'm not going to overthink this one. I'm just going to pick Ketlen Vieira by decision. He's back. Cody Brundage is back for... This is his fourth fight this year, is it not? No, it's just his third fight this year. Okay, I was going to say, my God, most active man on the roster. Cody Brundage is back here taking on Andre Petroski in a middleweight bout. I can't believe Brundage is still on the roster, and that's not even a talent-wise thing. He's lost his last 3 and then had a draw that was a loss but got overturned against Abdul Malik. Almost got knocked out by Julian Marquez, too. Abdul Razak Al Hassan, no contest. The Bo Nickel fight where, he had some moments against Bo Nickel, we could say, and then got choked out. Has the slam win over Zach Reese too, but I think we know what Cody Brundage is at this point. I mean, we watched him get out-wrestled by Cedriques Dumas for 3 rounds. The fight he's coming off of is weird. Arguably beat good prospect and Dante Johnson. I'm not overly high on Dante Johnson, but still had huge athletic advantages in that one. Still, overall, it's really hard to trust Brundage at this point. Durability wise, consistency wise, the guy just hasn't always shown up in top form, even though he clearly has the talent. It's a weird thing with Brundage, because a lot of times when you see these lower level fighters with a bunch of losses, you watch them and it's clear they're behind. But with Brundage, I almost feel like there's something there, but it never shows itself for more than a moment at a time, a brief glimpse at a time. So it's hard to say that it really is there. Anyways, he's taking on Andre Petroski, tough, strong, stocky grappler. Came into the UFC with a couple nasty submissions. I was really impressed with the Anaconda choke he hit on Nick Maximov, who'd never been finished before. Has struggled at times for sure, especially recently. He's kind of slowed down, had the back-to-back losses with the finish against Cam Rouston in his debut. Took a pretty good beating against Edmund Shabazian, even late in the fight where he extended it. Although he does have a decent win over Rodolfo Vieira before that. Maybe he hasn't aged the best, but at the time it was his third win in a row. So you got to give him that. As far as my take on this fight, I lean Petroski. I think he's the more dangerous guy, although it's really hard to trust either of these guys, especially when Petroski's the favorite. I don't know. I think I'm going to pick Petroski. I'll say he finds a submission. It's been a while since he found a submission, but I expect some wrestling exchanges in this one, and if Brundage shoots down, he sprawls and has a chance at that Anaconda or something. I think he obviously still has the skill to hit it. You don't forget stuff like that, despite not getting submissions lately. So my pick here is going to be Andre Petroski by second round submission, although I do not have much confidence reading either side of this fight. Next, we got the women's straw weights as Alice Ardelean takes on Polyana Viana here. Ardelean comes in having won her last 2, showing some decent wrestling. Much improved from her first stint in the UFC, or not her first stint, her first 2 UFC fights, where she was losing decisions to Shauna Bannon and Melissa Martinez, although she's still not beating the highest level girls in Rain dos Santos and Montserrat Ruiz. Overall, I don't think there's much there. I do think she's a solid wrestler who's getting better, or has gotten better. I think at 34 years old, we've kind of seen the ceiling. When you're losing decisions to Shauna Bannon, it's how far up can you go with respect. Polyana Viana, she's had some flashes in the UFC. She's a decent finisher, good submission games, got the one knockout over Jinyu Fry. Although she has been finished a lot herself, she spends a lot of time on her back against stronger grapplers. She gets tapped out herself by good submission artists, and she took the TKO loss to Jillian Robertson too when she was on top and just decided to elbow out. So I mean, it's finish or nothing for Viana. My take on this fight, I actually think there's a half decent betting spot here with Viana inside the distance only. Yes, she has lost inside the distance in her last 3. But Ardelean is certainly not the finisher. I don't think she's anywhere close to the level of those 3, to be honest, of Lucindo, Jillian Robertson, and Jacqueline Amorim. I just don't think Ardelean's close to that. I don't think she finishes. And when Polyana Viana wins, she has an insanely high finishing rate for a female strawweight, so it's almost always inside the distance. I would say there's a good chance that bet voids and Ardelean wins a decision, but nevertheless, pick 'em odds for Viana just inside the distance. I think she has just as good a chance to finish her, or she has a better chance to finish Ardelean. Although I do think the most likely outcome is probably Ardelean by decision. Next, pretty interesting flyweight matchup here between Daniel Barez and Luis Gurule. And I say that not because these are 2 really high-level fighters. These are 2 guys. Gurule 0-3 in the UFC. Barez has 1 UFC win, I believe. But you look at the props, and this is where I find that this fight gets very interesting, as they are all the same for both fighters. And if you don't get what I'm saying by that, allow me to explain a little deeper. Barez by points, plus 235. Gurule by points, plus 235. Barez by KO, plus 365. Gurule by KO, plus 365. Barez by submission, plus 850. Gurule by submission, plus 850. How often do we see a fight that is just as likely to go either way for both guys? There is, in theory, no upside for any method according to the odds makers. Now, what do I think of this fight? We'll start with Barez. He's a wild, aggressive guy. He's 37 years old. Hasn't been too active. It feels like it's been a long time since we saw that fight where he almost got Jafel Filo early and then ended up getting caught in the submission after going crazy. Most recently fought Andre Lima and got tapped in the 3rd round, although I'm not going to give him any shit for that because Andre Lima is one of my favorite prospects across the whole sport, not just in the flyweight division. I think he is a legit future top 5 guy. So I would have expected that he would have beat Barez there. Gurule, he has had a really disappointing UFC run. Came in as a big favorite over Ode Osborne. We cashed on Ode Osborne at about plus 200 in that one. And then since then, he lost as a big favorite again against Jesus Aguilar, and then lost to Alden Correa in his last fight, which, I mean, that's a tough one. Correa's looked good so far, but still 0-3, and never, ever want to be 0-3, especially when you were favored in 2 of those. But now he gets what I'd say is a step down in competition here to Barez, who is a bit more wild and on the older side at 37. And with that, I very slightly lean towards Gurule here. I mean, he's 5 years younger, been more active. I believe he can keep up the volume. He doesn't, he got knocked out by Osborne, but I don't think he has a terrible chin. I'm not overly concerned about that. The Aguilar fight is the most concerning look here. And Aguilar is a lot younger than Barez, and I think he's more trustworthy gas tank and durability wise than Barez is. So I very slightly lean Gurule to take a decision with volume. I think he just keeps up the pace over 3 rounds. Barez might fade a little late if he goes crazy early. So yeah, give me Luis Gurule to take a decision here in this interestingly lined matchup. And the last fight I'm going to go over for today, Shauna Bannon versus Nicole Cagliari at women's strawweight. Got Shauna Bannon. She's a solid kickboxer. She's got a 2-2 record in the UFC after dropping her debut to Bruna Brazil in a matchup where I think experience was just too much for her. Got a couple wins against Alice Ardelean and then the wild fight with Puja Tomar where she got kicked in the head and almost got knocked out. And while Tomar went for the finish, she found an armbar off her back. Wild win there. And then most recently, she was submitted by Sam Page Hughes in what was kind of a tough look. Although Sam is a gritty veteran, it's not necessarily a good look to be getting choked out by her in round 2. On the other side, Nicole Cagliari, she comes in without any UFC wins. She was a solid grappler outside the UFC, showed a lot of submission skills, has come into the UFC, had a close fight with Ernesta Karikate in her debut where she had some wrestling success, especially later in the fight, ended the third round on top. Did some good clinch work early, but wasn't able to get the takedowns, and that cost her. And then she got stuck on the feet against Carly Judice where she got finished in the third round. Overall, for my pick for this one, I'm going to pick Cagliari to get a decision. I think Bannon's takedown defense isn't going to be good enough to keep Cagliari off of her. I think Cagliari's submission game is good enough to avoid the submission game of Bannon off her back. So I think she gets on top and just controls her way to a decision win here. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Doug Las Vegas Bets UFC Betting Show. The only bets that I got locked in right now, I got no parlay of the week quite yet, but Duho Choi is going to be my underdog of the week, plus 140. And we went over the props as I took the over 2.5 and the decision prop in Wellmaker versus Diaz and Khaos versus Veretennikov with Williams by decision, as well as Wellmaker by decision. Thank you one more time for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment your favorite bet. It really helps me out when you guys engage with this stuff, subscribing, liking, commenting. I'm trying to grow the channel, so please do that. Please go check me out on socials if you're interested. My Twitter, my Instagram, both Doug Las Vegas Bets. Thank you one final time, and I will see you hopefully tomorrow. I'll be able to get my breakdown for the MVP card out, so stay tuned for that.